Hi, welcome to the Playing with Fire podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Spitulski. I'm an ex-firefighter and a current fire investigator, and I am joined by a very special, I'll call him an ex-firefighter, but an expert in the field of EVs, batteries, cars, everything, Richard Birt. Sir, how are you?
Nice. Yeah, it's great to be on the show, and it's great to be sharing this knowledge with people.
I say your name wrong. Is it?
Yep, it should be. I am a Brit, but you say it by
Birt.
Bert, but it's the same thing. My name is Bert, but I am a Brit. So brilliant.
I attended your class at the California Conference of Arson Investigators earlier this year, and I left the classroom scared. I will tell you that I spoke to a couple guys that went out and we decided we were going to retire because of how bad these fires are turning for those of us who are not only putting the fire out, but that are coming in after the fire's out and investigating the fire. Now, since then, you and I, our paths have crossed on solar panels as well. And so we can jump into a couple of different things, but I want to kind of focus on these EV cars and these lithium-ion batteries that every house has, and kind of discuss what the hazards are with them failing, what it looks like when they fail, what are the hazards of the smoke and the fire and the fumes of that failure, and then what's left afterwards and how that is concerning. And, you know, we've all seen the airplanes with the failures on the airplane in the overhead compartments. The phones are failing while people are standing in lines at places, and they are catastrophic. There is a lot of energy released. So let's start at the very beginning. Tell me about how you got into this, and then we'll kind of progress from there.
Yeah, great, Brian. So how it happened was basically I was from England and I was here. I was in the parachute world, skydiving world. And I was over here in 1987, 88, jumping out of airplanes. That's what I did. That's what I wanted to do. I was a professional skydiver, and I worked with military civilians. And I met an American girl, and the rest is history, and still married to her 35 years later. But I had to get a real job where it was more stable, and so I became a firefighter. The adrenaline is about the same as skydiving as firefighting, so it matched me perfectly. What happened was, basically, we moved to Las Vegas and decided to live off the grid in the mountains in Mount Charleston. You could be sipping a cocktail at Mandalay Bay, look to the northwest in Las Vegas. There's a big mountain, and a lot of the time it's got snow on it. And we lived up there, but there was no power up there, electric power from the grid. So I started designing solar and battery systems before it was a thing. So before the solar company said, right, we're going to put this on millions of homes. You're going to be driving an EV. You're going to have a battery in your home. Your vacuum cleaner is going to be run by a battery, a lithium-ion
Right.
battery, and so on and so forth. I was in that world, and basically I was tracking it as a firefighter. So I'm a pioneer of it, and the cool thing for me is I got to track that development through to where we are today. So that's how it started. And my research was dedicated to firefighter safety. How is this new technology? Every listener on this broadcast right now has at least 20 lithium-ion batteries in their home.
Yep.
And what does that mean? And when it goes bad or there's an incident, and that is what my research is fundamentally based on. What are the risks to firefighters, civilians, to their property, and how to stabilize it?
Okay, so let's work from my house. I have I've got the robo vacuum thing that goes around and does its own thing. Let's say that all of a sudden that thing stops, it starts squealing, making a noise, and I start seeing smoke come out of it. What's happening?
So where we could start is flavors of ice cream. So there's a chemistry. So you've got a cell, and depending on what kind of cell construction, these cells are put together in a box to make a battery. So let's say your cleaner, your vacuum cleaner, it has maybe a few cells in them that are series together, joined together, and they put it in a plastic prismatic box, and they put it in your vacuum cleaner, and that's your battery for your vacuum cleaner. We used to lead acid batteries. Everybody has seen a lead acid battery, touched a lead acid battery. If you're driving a car as a kid, you've seen lead acid batteries. This is completely different. So the question is, what is the chemistry in that battery? And that's where you start. And so there's different flavors of ice cream. There's some really unstable flavors of chemistry they use.
Right.
And then that's the bad ice cream. You don't want to taste that kind of ice cream. And then what you have is different chemistries become more and more stable. So I suggest for civilians, firefighters all around the world, is do a lithium battery audit of your home. And because of Google and AI, brilliant. You can just go, I have this kind of cleaner with what kind of battery do I have in this? And then you can start getting your information. This is where knowledge is critical to the consumer, to the firefighter, to the investigator, that whole chain. So it's not just about firefighters.
Right.
The whole civilian base should be doing this with whatever they buy and put in their home.
I agree. So when this thing fails, we've got a massive amount of energy that's typically released. And you and I were talking about the hazards of that release. It's not just temperature that's the problem. It's the gases that are coming out of it that's a problem. And I think the point I want to make is that it's not always safe for a person without proper PPE, the protective clothing that we typically wear, to try to do something other than evacuate the item that's smoking. Throw it out in the backyard. But tell me about the smoke that's generated from these, or the fumes that are generated.
So you have this chemistry in this cell that makes a battery. So let's pick NMC, which is a very common chemistry. I won't go into the chemical name because it just bogs it down. But NMC is a very, very popular chemistry. Now, what happens is, and people don't understand this part, is that chemistry, when it fails, depending on whether it heats up and just starts off-gassing this very white smoke, that smoke is toxic because of the chemistry and the electrolyte it was made of. So at this point, every smoke is bad for you. I wouldn't want anyone breathing smoke from a mattress,
Right,
or a chair or carpet. But the trouble is, these chemistries, like that smoke from NMC, has heavy metals in them. And they have fluorides in them. And this is where it changes. And basically what you're looking at is in that smoke, and it looks like very, very, I call it Disney smoke, because it's not hot. It doesn't look angry. And that's how usually people look at smoke and go, oh, that's dark, black, nasty looking stuff. And your brain, doesn't matter if you've got experience or not, goes, I shouldn't be breathing that in.
right.
This is kind of white, puffy smoke. And it doesn't look so harmful. But within that smoke, we've got to realize and start educating and start understanding that smoke can have fluorides in it. And the trouble with those kind of chemicals is if you breathe them in your lungs, it's really moist in there because of expansion, and there's a lot of moisture in there. And what you can do is basically between the hydrogen and the fluoride, you can cause hydrofluoric acid to form. And what that does is we've had firefighters now who have basically burning of their lungs. They breathe this in, it creates hydrofluoric acid because it mixes with the moisture, and now you have your alveoli, the lining of your lungs, can start getting eaten away. So you go from being a young firefighter fit to having the lungs of a 90-year-old. So
Wow.
This is what everybody's got to start understanding. You can't breathe this smoke in. You don't have the ability to breathe this smoke in. You've got to look at this and say, this is smoke I can't breathe, and protect yourself from it.
So as I'm going to try to explain this to those who don't understand how these batteries are made, they kind of look like a ding dong. You know, the wrap that's inside of the battery. So you've got this really thin piece of copper, like foil, and then you have it protected on either side of it by like a clear spray, a polymer or whatever it is that they spray these things with, and then they roll it really tight so that that keeps separated, correct?
Yep. So it's
And then-
kind of layers. Yes.
Yeah, layers of it, but it's rolled, and that's how they get that round shape of the battery, or it depends on the battery.
Right. So
Whether
you
it's
can have
rolled.
different forms of it. You can have
Right.
it in a metal cylinder, which is called a cell, which is cylindrical. Then you can have it in a pouch, because a lot of people will see a pouch swell up. And then you'll have it in a hard plastic case, and that's called prismatic. So it comes in different containers,
Okay.
but the form is the same. You have an anode and a cathode. So basically, yeah, it's like making a peanut butter and jelly
There
sandwich.
you go.
It's kind
I
of,
like
that's
that.
the way. Layer it up and
Yep.
do as many layers, and that makes your sandwich. And
Okay.
you have the chemistry and the anode and cathode.
Right. So when that failure takes place, that separator, the bread or whatever it is that's keeping it separated, fails for whatever reason, and now you're getting a direct contact between the layers. Is that correct?
So at this point, you have to make electricity. The electrons have to move from the anode to the cathode. And there's a separator, and it's thinner than one of your hair.
Right.
And what it does is it allows those electrons to move, but you don't want to mix those two, the anode and the cathode. If you do, you get shorting, you get heat, and now you start getting a thermal event. So
Okay.
it's critical to understand there's a very, very small separator in these cells, and that can get damaged very, very easily if it's moving around. A static cell in a battery is pretty stable. If you put a residential battery on your wall with the right battery management system, it's a pretty solid piece of kit. It's not going to go south on you. But when you start, think about dropping a battery on your drill. How many times has anyone on this podcast dropped a battery, put it back in and gone, I hope it works?
Yep.
That could be trauma to that separator. And when you put it on the charge, that just may push it over the edge to create that fault. Now you got off-gassing. Now you got a lot of hydrogen being produced.
That's
So
smart.
LFP is one of the safer chemistries, but it produces a lot of hydrogen. Now we have incidences around the world where this hydrogen builds up. And hydrogen is on the same ballpark as acetylene. So when you start having those kind of concentrations of hydrogen in a confined space, it doesn't take much, like for the lower explosive limit and upper explosive limit, the window opens for a very large explosion.
You said acetylene. I think your accent caused me a pause for a second, but now I understand exactly what you're saying is that that explosive capability is there. Hydrogen, we all know, hydrogen is very volatile. It's very hard to control and to contain as well. It's one of the smaller molecules, so it finds a way out. And that's part of the problem is if it doesn't find its way out quick enough, it over pressurizes the cell.
Exactly. And then what it does is you can get 3 to 7 liters of production of one cell of hydrogen, of off-gassing.
Wow.
And 60% of that could be hydrogen. So what we're looking at is a small cell can produce a lot of gas that's got a lot of hydrogen in it, and now you've got an explosive atmosphere. And we've got to understand that the battery management systems that are designed aren't all the same either. So technology comes into our world with very few standards. This is something that has blown my mind. Is you can go on Amazon and you can order a replacement battery for the battery that failed in your vacuum cleaner.
Yep.
Now, there's going to be choices on Amazon of what you buy. And this is what I don't understand, is you can get the half price battery and then you buy 2 of them because it's a great price. You're getting 2 for 1. And you don't know the quality of that piece of equipment.
Yep.
And this, to me, shouldn't happen. All the batteries shipped into this country should be of a certain standard and a certain quality, but that's not happening.
Right.
So it's about education. It's about choice. It's about knowing this. So when you do and you are aware and you buy something, you're going to go, right, I understand the consequences of this going bad, as in your house burning down. So no, I'm not going to invest in the cheaper part of it. I'm going to follow the instructions. I'm going to buy the correct battery management system. You know how many people on this podcast have a battery and they lose the charger for it?
Oh my gosh.
And usually the charger has the battery management system in it.
Right.
So the charger's looking at the battery and it's paired together and going, right, if this battery needs this kind of trickle charge, it needs to shut off here, its temperature needs to be this, okay? Now, they're matched, so it knows what it's charging. So how many on the podcast have gone, right, where's another charger? Like,
Universal,
yeah,
yep.
the green light came on, I'm good. And then, how many people on this podcast go off and do something else and forget it's on the charger and it's in the garage, the basement, in the bedroom, and they leave it on that charger till a day or 2 days later they go, is that thing still on the charger? And they unplug it. Right. These are all habits that have to change. It's an awareness thing.
Yeah, I can tell you that Amazon does not probably like me too much because they are our target for those batteries that people buy that are substandard or they're of lesser quality from another country, because Amazon is responsible for everything that they sell. So we've brought Amazon into a number of cases. The secondhand batteries that come from these other countries that maybe the quality control isn't as tight as it is from the specific manufacturer, what is that failure of those batteries, do you think?
So because it's new technology, if you go to any organization connected to NFPA, UL and everything, we've been burning rooms for how long? How many videos have you seen of a Christmas tree burning? How many years have they been studying that? And they can nail a couch, a mattress, a room involvement. We haven't been studying this long enough. All we know is this, that these chemistries can create a lot of heat. They can create a lot of hydrogen. They can explode and they can start a fire and they can keep burning even after the rest of the house is out, because they can create their own oxygen, create their own heat, chemical reaction. The biggest thing we've got to understand is, and nobody wanted to say this in the battery world, how are you going to sell any kind of battery and start with danger first? Which they should have, and said, listen, this is a new technology, but these things are really, really important to learn. So it's almost like, be responsible. If you take on a battery, here's your responsibilities. How many of those are they going to sell? If you got a list of responsibilities like that, mate, you tell me.
Right.
They're
Won't
easy.
be marketable.
Plug it in. Forget about it.
Yep.
It's green. It's this. It's that. Yeah, it's got all those. But we should have started with education and saying, when you take this on, you've got to be responsible for it because the consequences could be bad, and that you've got to understand what you're taking on.
Right. Now, we've lost firefighters to the smoke. As you're going through training, you're typically taught, as you said, the black smoke is the bad. White or gray smoke typically means you're getting water on it. That's not the case with these car batteries that are going down the freeway. The specific, I won't say a name of a manufacturer, but you get these certain batteries that fail, and the firefighters would come out, be putting on their gear, and the wind would shift and the cloud would drift over the rig or wherever they're standing. And that's where a lot of these guys were getting knocked down from, is they weren't fighting the fire, but it was drift. It was smoke that came into them and touched them. And I think now that a lot of agencies, at least out here in the Bay Area in Northern California, they're not putting these fires out. They're letting them burn. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, water doesn't do a lot to it because, as you just said, it generates its own oxygen. you can't take the heat out of it because you can't get to where the battery is actually off gassing. So is that what you would recommend as well? Is that these things just burn themselves out?
So my training platform for firefighters is critical at this point, and the EV is just one part of it because you got BESS and everything else. So the EV, for instance, I was a firefighter for 30 years. Internal combustion engine had bad smoke in it, but the products of combustion in the EV is different because of the makeup of the chemistry in it. And so you've got large amounts of basically fluoride particulate. And so fluoride particulate gets in the smoke, that gets on your gear. You can't get that out of your gear now. It's not like taking it back, putting it in the extractor, and you've got clean gear. Because the fluoride particulate has heavy metals in it, because the cell of that battery that's driving that car, moving that car, has heavy metals in it. So the heavy metal bus sits in the fluoride particulate. So at this point, you've got heavy, densely particulate in the smoke. And on it, you've got the heavy metal bus. And what happens is, guys don't understand, is if you start sweating, which you are on a car fire,
right,
in the summer in California, if you take your gear off the wrong way, you can get fluoride particulate on your skin. Well, that fluoride particulate mixes with the sweat and causes a mild hydrofluoric acid. Now you have irritation. And at this point, at the capillary level, because I was a medic for 27 years, what it does, it just opens the doors to say, okay, it's like a school bus. Kids getting off. The heavy metal bus unloads into your vascular system. So now we're finding firefighters with heavy metals in their systems. And so the awareness is a hazmat level awareness. So what I teach is this has become, it's not a car fire anymore. I'll be talking to London Fire Brigade in a week from now. They consider an electric vehicle fire a hazmat incident.
Wow.
Period. Wow. They don't go, this is a car fire, this is traditional car smoke. They don't. And we have to actually start recognizing it because we have the gear to protect us. We are just not using it because we are not designating the scene the appropriate way. We've got to start understanding the construction of the building. We've got to understand the construction of these EVs. It's the same principle as lightweight construction. And so we've got to actually educate on what the components are, what the products of combustion are, and start really building a comprehensive understanding that if you're not wearing your air pack, you are going to breathe in some fluoride particulate. You're going to breathe in and create hydrogen fluoride.
You know, I'm really glad that you brought that part up because I'm not always in when it's hot and smoky and the fire's, just gone out. Most of the time I'm there weeks after the fire. But you still have those products of combustion that, let's say we had a garage fire. We had an electric car in the garage, caught fire and spread smoke into the living area of the house. You walk into the living area, you do your documentation, you go out in the garage and you look at the car and you're like, okay, the car's an issue. But I've already crossed into a hazmat by walking in the front door, correct?
So at this point, what you've got to think about investigating, number one, is that soot, the smoke, it may have laid down. You may have had some dilution with water and stuff. The thing is, how many of those cells are just sitting damaged, ready to go off?
Reignite.
The biggest risk for an investigator is not all those cells are burnt. They're just sitting there. They're unstable. And if one of them decides while you're in the middle of your investigation, it's going to produce 3 to 7 liters of this toxic substance, and you're not protected because you're not wearing an SCBA. I am teaching investigators to switch to SCBAs. To me, because of the fact there's thousands of cells in a car. Right. So you have a damaged car. Not every one of those cells have been burnt. The potential, I would say the potential for the investigator is, the risk factor is higher than the firefighter. The firefighter is going to be in his air pack. He's going to be fighting the fire. He's going to know how to take his gear off because of the contaminants. The investigator, none of this training's been done. I would say you're more vulnerable because this is not a mattress that's soaked down, and you know as an investigator that is not going to catch on fire again.
Right.
But you're going through looking at different cells, different chemistries that are literally live grenades. I would like to do this training exercise with the fire investigators. Go, right, this house has 20 live grenades in it. Some of the pins are partially out. If you move something, one of the pins might pop out. What do you think, and how would you approach that scene?
I'd be in a vest. I'd be a helmet. I'd have air pack. I'd be totally protected against the grenade.
Right. Think about this.
Yeah.
This is literally what I want you and investigators around the world to actually think about. You are now going into these are small little bombs, I consider them.
Right.
And they're damaged.
So let me hit you another way, because you're familiar with the insurance industry, how long it took them to develop protocol for black mold and asbestos. This is 100 times worse, in my opinion, than those two items. I think we should be paying more attention to mercury and fluorescent light bulbs, but we've now moved into a different realm of contamination and hazard in every residential fire. Not just vehicle fires, but every residential fire.
I teach an overhaul series for the residential fire. And one of the biggest things for a company officer who puts out a house, the last thing he wants is a rekindle.
Right.
And so what I'm teaching is this. After a residential structure fire, you have a bunch of damaged lithium-ion batteries of all shapes and sizes, of all chemistries. And like I said in the beginning, everyone on this podcast has at least 20 different lithium-ion batteries in their home on an average.
Right.
So at this point, what you've got to do is actually do your overhaul differently. It's no longer taking the couch that's smoldering outside and soaking it down. There's no longer removing a mattress outside. There's no longer just pulling through, blowing in insulation to make sure there's no hot spots. What we have to do is a comprehensive overhaul, and it starts with that scene where the firefighters are looking at hot spots through to your chain of custody and overhaul and investigation. We need units where these lithium-ion batteries can be taken out, just like the bomb squad.
Yep.
When the bomb squad, and a good friend of mine in Las Vegas, she's in charge of the bomb squad in Las Vegas. She's the commander. And when they bring something suspect out, they put it in this basically protective casing mobile unit.
Right.
I want the fire service to understand that we're at that point on a residential structure fire. You've got to take all those lithium-ion batteries that could be damaged by heat and by smoke and by flame contact and be unstable, and it's got to go into a safe container where it can be contained, and if there's any kind of thermal reaction, it brings it down and stabilizes. We have to do that. We have to do that as an industry. We've got to start looking at a statewide industry where something comes in, they get removed, and the only time those lithium-ion batteries are stable, the only time you have solved the problem is when they go to a recycling, like Redwood Industries, where they take the cell apart, they take the anode, the cathode, the graphite off the anode, the heavy metal crystals on the cathode, the graphite off the anode, take the lithium out, then it's solved. Until then, Bryan, I am saying you have not solved the problem.
Okay. So kind of a follow-up with how we've been going down the discussion so far regarding the firefighter. How, or is there a way that a firefighter can have some type of detector on his turnouts, his SCBA or something like that, that will alert them to an exposure?
At this point, you have the hazmat teams have chem strips, and they're aware of what kind of gases, and so they do gas monitoring. So the awareness level and detection comes in. Yes, this is present, and from all the testing we've done, yes, it is present. The last EV I burnt, I had one of Paul Christensen, the fire marshal of Utah, state fire marshal, who's been to Chernobyl 18 times. was doing the gas monitoring. And so we're getting the experts going, yes, it's here. And so the firefighter's got to say, I'm in the soup. It's not like, did I get in the soup? No, you climbed in the soup bowl. If you're in the smoke, you're in the soup.
Right.
The question is, what do I do when I get out of the soup? And this is the most important thing for firefighters to understand across the world, is those products of combustion, the fluoride particulate is on your gear because it was in the smoke and now it's embedded in your gear. And depending on the chemistry, has the heavy metals in it. So at this point, you're going, right, my gear, I'm looking at my coat and my pants and my helmet, and I've got particulate on it. It's not good particulate. I don't want to get in my skin. So what you do is you take your gear off very, very carefully so you don't get that particulate on your skin. You wash your hard surfaces. You can't wear leather helmets anymore. That's nuts. So you wash your hard surfaces and you take your gear and you bag it. And what happens then is you go, right, there's soup on that gear. And what you've got to do is get specialized cleaning. You've got to be aware that your extractor does not take out the heavy metals.
Wow.
So at this point, you take your gear and go, right, I got it in a bag, it's contaminated. Think of the culture of the fire service. You get back on the rig, you take your coat off, your coat's hanging up, you're in your pants, in your boots, right?
Yep.
Think of what we do. That has to change if you are in the smoke of an EV. So with the gear, number one is specialized cleaning. Right now, there are only special units that can do that. So the departments are sending it out to be cleaned and then tested to see if the heavy metals have gone. Number two, you take that gear off and it's bagged until it goes to cleaning and comes back. Number three, you really want to hard decon your helmet. So you get a good old-fashioned bucket of water. Think of particulate. It's the particulate. You get a scrub brush and you really clean that off and dilute it down. And as you're diluting it down, you're getting rid of a lot of the heavy metals because it's a small amount of heavy metals. You just don't want it in your skin, right?
Right.
So good old-fashioned brush. That's why you can't wear a leather helmet anymore.
Because it permeates into the leather and you can't get it out.
You need a hard surface. Yeah.
Right.
So that's why helmets, hoods come off. You decon your SCBA. You give it a good scrub, wash it down. It's a decon process.
Is the state looking at some type of law or something that will regulate, like they do for asbestos and lead and stuff like that, these sites, because they truly are hazardous materials sites now?
What I would say, after a working fire, I would do the due diligence of testing that site and saying these things could be there.
Okay.
And that's just the awareness of saying, right, they may not be there, but they can. The possibility of them being there needs to be tested, depending on the different varieties of chemistries. So it's an awareness thing of saying, okay, we're going to go test this.
But the state mandates certain things with a house with asbestos. They come in, they test it for asbestos. Now, all of that has to be cleaned up a special way and disposed of a special way. Is that something that should be happening for these battery fires now?
No, because basically at this point, there may not be the chemistry or there may not be the contamination. Asbestos is asbestos. We've got different flavors of chemistries in these cells. So you may have an abundance of a certain chemistry that doesn't have the same particulate. It didn't burn the same way.
Got it.
And that's the problem, is what caused that? Was it the burn rate? Did it get burnt up? This can create different chemistries and different particulate. And that's the problem. It's about awareness and protection.
This is massive to understand the impact it will have, not just on the fire service, but on, because now I work in the insurance industry at doing the investigations, I can see the issues that are developing with that same contamination when in a house where they thought it was just, we can just repaint it or seal it or something like that. And they're not even touching the issue. Can you give me a rundown of your basic items or some items that people would have in their home that maybe they're not aware that it's a lithium-ion battery?
Basically, look at California. They've got rid of gas-powered any kind of lawn device. It has to be a lithium-ion battery. As I understand, if it's not a plug-in vacuum cleaner, it's got a battery. most medical devices have batteries. Most of anything is portable in your home is a lithium-ion battery. Very, very few things are lead-acid batteries. And you know what they are because you have to change them out all the time and you're not recharging them. So the standard AAA, AA batteries that we've been used to forever don't have lithium. They're just standard old-fashioned lead-acid batteries. So you've got to understand that I would say most people, if you have a rechargeable whatever, it's going to be a lithium-ion battery. What I want the public to understand is if you go get a new prescription at the pharmacy, the pharmacist looks at you and goes, "Do you want a pharmacy consult?" And you're like, "Yes, please, because I really don't know about this medication." What I'm saying to you is that these lithium-ion batteries in your home, when you buy a product, should have some sort of consult with them to say, this is what you do. Think of a pharmacist talking to somebody about a new medication. You got to do this and don't do that and do this and make sure this. It literally is at the point where you're at Home Depot and you've bought this really fancy lawnmower with a lithium-ion battery. You get a consult from a person at Home Depot's had the training and say, listen, here's a booklet. This is what you're buying. Be aware of it. And these are the things we should tell you about it.
Yep.
This is where the industry did not want to do that. And you know why. It's obvious reasons, right? One safety tip I would give right now, and this is for the homeowners. This is for everybody. It's not just for the fire service. If you can go and buy yourself a timer. So what happens is you have this lithium-ion battery cell that makes a battery in this product, your vacuum cleaner. And then what you do is you charge it, and then that battery management system charges it and goes, right, this battery's full, and then it either shuts it off or trickle charges it, so it's very efficient. The trouble is, what you want to do is you want to shut off all the electricity going to that. So once it's charged, you go, right, I don't want any electricity. It's a bit like turning the water mains off out on the street, okay? And then say you're working on a bathroom, you go and turn a toilet off at that toilet, right? So instead of shutting off for the mains, your house, you can shut off right at the toilet. What I'm saying to people is get yourself a little timer. This is a brilliant concept. $20, $15 from Walmart, wherever. And you set how long the electricity flows through that plug. So when you plug your device in, you have a backup to a backup. That device will only charge for the hour you set it. Then the electricity shut off. You're not relying on a battery management system to say, well, there's juice coming in, but I'm just going to trickle charge it. Does that make sense? Every device in your home that's a lithium-ion battery, if you're unable to monitor it from the time you plug it in to you charge it, should be on a timer. Even if you put your phone on your nightstand because you want it charged in the morning, set it on a timer. Very simple, brilliant way of adding a protection layer that's simple, that's cheap.
Because we do not want to overcharge those batteries and cause them to fail. That's the purpose of the timer, correct?
And the charger. Remember what I said, you might be mixing battery management systems that aren't with the right cell. And that happens constantly, right?
Right.
So at this point, it's like a really cheap initial backup to the backup. It is a great way for somebody to do this today. So it's not like, oh my God, I got to do this comprehensive plan. It's like I could go get one of those today and start working on all the charging, all the things. I put it next to your bed. I tell people, put one of those by your bed. When you go to bed, crank it for an hour, set it for an hour. Your phone's going to be charged. It's going to be fine. It'll be charged in the morning because it only takes, know how long your devices take to charge too.
Right.
And then set your time. Peace of mind. It's a great start.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. We will be in touch with you to do another episode. We'll post your nonprofit on our social media accounts. And again, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Bryan.